that was described in the Washington Post review as,
Seth
quote,
Rogan.
a candid collection of side-splitting essays,
New book
unquote.
called Yearbook.
He writes about how he started to do stand-up when he was 12. 12! And why it was at a lesbian bar. His adolescent insecurities about girls and not having a girlfriend, his mild case of Tourette's syndrome, his father's Tourette's is more pronounced, how his father became a sperm donor for a lesbian couple, making Seth Rogan the half-brother of their 2 children, his use of weed, mushrooms, and LSD, how he started acting and making movies, and the threats made by North Korea because of his film comedy The Interview, in which Kim Jong-un is assassinated. Rogan has produced and/or directed, written, or starred in many films, including Knocked Up, Superbad, Pineapple Express, This Is the End, The Interview, The Disaster Artist, Steve Jobs, Sausage Party, Long Shot, and An American Pickle. Along with his writing, directing, and producing partner, Evan Goldberg, he founded the production company Point Grey Pictures. They also recently founded a company that sells marijuana. It opened in 2019 in Canada, where Rogan and Goldberg are from. And in March, they opened a branch in California.
Just letting you know.
Seth Rogan, welcome back to Fresh Air, and congratulations on your new book. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love the advice you were given by your first comedy teacher, and you were about 12 then, which is that nobody wants to hear what you like. Fun isn't funny. Comedy is pain. It's struggle. So don't ask yourself, what's funny to me? Ask yourself, what bothers me? What frustrates me? What do I wish I could change? That's a pretty sophisticated thought for a 12-year-old to digest. Is that advice you still try to follow?
To some degree, I think failure is more entertaining than success in general. I think a bunch of people screaming at each other, arguing about something, stressed out, is more funny to watch and more entertaining to watch than a bunch of people getting along and having cohesion on something. And so
I don't know.
I think the idea that entertainment and comedy comes from conflict, and conflict comes from pain often.
Like, I think the shipping wars could do a lot better if they just helped each other
general,
out.
Looking towards that feeling rather than what do you love, what makes you happy, what's going great, and it's for sure something that I still think about a lot. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
So with the advice you were given in mind, what was your comedy like when you were 12 performing in front of an audience?
It was about the things that I didn't like, and at that time my grandparents were probably the major source of stress in my life, and I just really didn't get along with them very well. I would go to their house on Fridays and hang out with them while my family was at synagogue, and they would yell at each other and scream at each other, and that's where my head went as far as what should my first jokes be.
You were going to this comedy class because when your parents realized you loved comedy, your mother went and signed you up for this class. You were, I think, the youngest person in the class. And
yes, by far.
Somehow this class had an arrangement with a lesbian bar so that the people in the class would perform there. How was that arrangement made?
I'm not sure. I think it was probably just a cheap space to have a showcase for a bunch of comedians. They knew maybe it would be busy on whatever night the showcase was. It's funny in retrospect. I have no idea, but it was actually in Vancouver, like a pretty famous lesbian bar. So, it was a good crowd, you know. But yeah, it was. It's always will be a part of my story that the first time I told jokes was in front of around 100 lesbians. Yeah.
So as a 12-year-old boy, did you ask yourself, what's going to go over in front of a lesbian audience?
What's going to go over? I assumed the same things. I assumed the lesbians had grandparents just like I did, and most of my jokes were grandparent based. So I felt confident.
Tell us one of your grandparent jokes.
There we go. Thank you.
I had a few. I had one.
That's interviewing right there.
My grandmother, she kind of I guess her hair was thinning as she got older, and she kind of picked her hair out into kind of like an afro, kind of like a real poofy look, which looked normal in general. But then sometimes, whenever she was backlit, you could see through the hair and straight to her scalp, and you essentially could see what she would look like. She looked bald. If she was completely bald, and I would say she looked like Gandhi in a floral jumpsuit, which was very true, a very accurate description. So that was a joke about my grandmother that I would tell. I would tell jokes about them arguing and not being able to hear each other. Pass me a pillow. What? I'm an armadillo? I had a lot of jokes like that. Yeah, in general, really roasting my grandparents.
Had your voice changed yet when you were first doing comedy?
I kind of had like a high but raspy voice. It wasn't like as embarrassing as so. I think there is videotape of it somewhere. I mean, I think it's probably on YouTube or something like that.
I saw a couple of things on YouTube, and one of them, I'm not sure if you were 12, one of them I think you were more like 17, and your hair, your hair was so, I almost thought it was a hat at first.
Was it did I have a big green crazy mess of hair, or did I have hair like very gelled on my head that was short?
It looked like you were wearing rollers, which you weren't.
Oh yeah, I know the exact era you're speaking of. Moose was a big thing back then. I think it took me a long time to navigate this curly hair of mine, and I used to use I had mousse in my hair. I think that created tight ringlets. That Justin Timberlake had a similar look for a while. It was like a tight mousse ringlet look that was not flattering in any way, shape, or form.
So one of the real surprises for me, at least, in reading your book, was that your father has OCD and Tourette's, and you have a very mild case of Tourette's. Was it actually diagnosed?
I mean, a doctor was like,
yeah, know about anybody.
You likely have it due to your father and due to the symptoms I would say it was like, informally diagnosed, but I have talked to doctors about it, yes. And it is genetic. It's heavily genetic, and my dad was diagnosed.